All right, guys, I'm at SWAT school with LT, Lieutenant David. How's it going, sir?
Doing fine. How are you?
I am great. I'm having fun and watching all the tactics. And you've been at this a little while, huh?
Yes, I have.
How long has your law enforcement career been, and how long have you been teaching SWAT schools and firearms tactics and that kind of thing?
Law enforcement for 40 years. SWAT school for 28. You've been teaching SWAT schools for 28 years.
28 years. And this is your very last SWAT
This
school?
is my last one before retirement.
And you're going to really, really retire this time, or is this just one of the times?
I've retired. This is my second retirement. So I will not be doing anything full time, maybe a little bit of part time stuff here and there, but nothing full time.
Okay. What kind of changes, that's a long time, what kind of changes have come up in SWAT, either in the tactics and weapons and technology? What have you kind of seen different trends kind of over the time? Is there anything
Yeah,
that
back
stands
in
out?
the old days, most everything on a SWAT school was going dynamic as far as the entry. That's what I started out doing
Flood in the room.
back in 1984. And now the pendulum, after we've had some injuries, some shootings on SWAT, officers getting shot, the pendulum kind of swung backwards a little bit and got more going more slow and static. But now we're kind of seeing the trend where it's kind of going back dynamic again. You know, we're preaching against that. You know, there's pros and cons on whatever technique you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot as far as incorporating, as far as, well, are we going to do dynamic on the entry, then slow and static, or are we going dynamic the whole way? You know, what are the obstacles that may prevent us from going dynamic? So there's a lot of evaluation in there to determine what we're going to do, what we're not going to do.
Do you think something middle of the road is usually best, or does it depend on the mission
All
parameters?
depends
Like
on
if it's a
the-
hostage situation, you want dynamic flooding the room
Yes.
because then they're overwhelmed really fast. But you probably have a little higher risk of officer safety, even accidentally ending each other, tripping at the doorway and things like that, right? So kind of maybe now things are going a in between route.
Kind of in between. We're sticking to the basic tactics, the fundamentals in our SWAT school, or the handgun techniques out on the range, doing a whole lot of shootings, different scenarios, judgmental shooting. Not every target they're going to have in front of them. Like they're doing a room clearing on the range itself, and have paper targets down the range. You may have one that is a shoot, and one that's a no shoot. And so we're trying to get instilled in the officers that not all the time you're going to go in, you're going to shoot somebody. You know, that's bad training. Just like in the old days, every time we'd set up a scenario, or when I would go through a scenario, you get ambushed. You know, you get the crap shot out of you. So we make all the training realistic, where if you do everything you can, it's going to be a win situation.
Okay. I don't know if there's any bigger call outs, bigger stuff that's been public that you want to talk about. Are there any 3, 4 things you've been involved in, something that really pops in your head that maybe made the news, made the papers, or anything like
My
that
old
that you're allowed to
agency,
talk
we're on
about?
the news all the time.
Yeah.
But we did a lot of good stuff.
That was in DeKalb.
At DeKalb County, at DeKalb Sheriff's Office.
They've been known for not messing around and putting a lot of bad guys in the dirt over the years.
Well, I got my old major died about a month and a half ago, and his son sent me a banner that we had in the office. Sent me a picture of it on the phone, and it said DeKalb County, cuff him and stuff him.
Now, yeah, you go back a while. So can we talk about some of the weapons and ammunition and stuff like that? I mean, back then was it pump action shotguns, and maybe then it went into MP5s, and now it's ARs on the long gun side of things?
Yeah, you've seen a lot of changes, and of course with the changes, we've had to incorporate the changes also in the training. Back when I started at DeKalb, most of us carried 1911 45s. The shootings I was involved in was with the 1911 45. In fact, I actually got interviewed back in, I think it was 2012, by Handgun Magazine on external safeties on a gun. And the emphasis was, do you remember taking off the thumb safety or not when you were involved in shooting? And I said, I couldn't tell you. I know I did because I ended up shooting. But from the training, we had so much training with it, it was just instinct.
It's automatic on the draw because you were with that platform for so long. You knew it like the way it was, and that's how a lot of guys. I don't know if you follow Uncle Scotty was LAPD in the 70s. He talked about stuff like that, 1911s as well. Do you know about what era you guys got away from the 1911s and away from 45?
Back in, we all went at DeKalb, and it was in the early 2000s to H&K 40. And so then we were not able to carry 1911s. It was everybody's going to carry the same weapon now, which was good. Got its pros for doing that as far as training and ammunition and keeping everybody the same type of training. So it was good on that. The long guns kind of went away. Not so much the long guns, but the sub guns. Yeah. MP5 used to be very, very popular. Still a great weapon that I believe in. But then started going to the AR platform. And so we started having to change the training. We don't do, in the basic level 1, we don't do any long gun shooting. That is all, or rifle shooting, that is all in our level 2 class.
Okay. And I think the cab, and I assume most of the departments here this week, went from 45 to 40 to 9, maybe back, and now everyone's back at 9mm again. I see mostly Glocks out there, almost primarily. I don't think I've spotted anything else yet. If you don't mind telling a little bit about your shootings, were you guys using ball ammo or hollow points back then?
No, we were using hollow points back then.
And 45 hollow points work, I assume?
Yes, they do.
They work really well, right?
45 is still one of my favorite guns.
I've done a 4-part series on 9mm versus 45, and actually how much tissue crush difference there are. Both ball is 62% between ball, and 9mm is good. I carry it a lot, but 45 to 9mm, it's 62% more with ball to ball, and hollow point to hollow point. If you're using like an HST, it's like ridiculously what the difference is. It's 2.11 times bigger and more tissue crush through the body.
You got more collateral damage.
Which I assume, I mean, something like that, double taps maybe did work, and nowadays 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We saw 12 in a cop shooting about a month ago. The guy just went at him with the stick. 12 shots till he finally, he was soaking them up like it was breakfast or something. So, but I assume overall weapon lights have gotten way better. I assume tactics have gotten better. Does that kind of make everyone's job easier? And is there anything that makes things more difficult nowadays compared to back in the day?
One of the things that hit us a while back and is true now is getting ammunition. Years ago, when the Gulf War first started up, Associated Press actually came up and interviewed our agency and interviewed me as far as what are y'all doing now since ammo's so hard to get and now on back order, which ours has been on back order also. And we just said we do more force-on-force training with submunitions.
Is that fairly cost effective if you buy in bulk the submunitions?
Oh, yeah.
So you can do it?
Submunition rounds.
Am I going to get shot this week? Is that what you're telling me?
Said you
do you want me to be? I can be a bad guy role player hiding in there.
If you do everything right, you won't get shot. But if you leave your back exposed or something, you probably will.
Okay, well, we'll see. I'll be able to. I'll bad guy role play if you guys are into that. I'll gear up and I'll take some welts for the team. I guess, is there anything else you want to get into or leave to kind of the people taking over as you leave? Is there any advice you have for? It's especially trying time for any law enforcement right now. Is there any advice you have for the young bucks? Is there anything you want to say about the oath and people using cops as a political tool and telling them to do, things against the oath that every law enforcement officer takes, right? Probably even when you switch a department, you probably retake your oath, right? So, is there anything like that you want to tell anyone that sees us?
What I told the class in here this morning after they qualified, and then we're going over the history of SWAT, a little bit of tactics, operational orders, use of force, use of force, use of force. We go over that continually. So when are you justified in use of force that you can? Graham versus Connor is the case law, the umbrella for all law enforcement, not just in the state of Georgia, but everywhere in the country, that we fall under as far as what force we can and cannot do. So we preach that the whole time. Not only just in service, but we preach at SWAT school also, because it really falls more into play in a SWAT operation when you're actually going in and you got to make that split-second decision whether you're going to shoot or not, whether you're going to be justified. But what I tell these guys, even this morning, is that with everything on the news nowadays, all the so much of society against law enforcement, police being under so much scrutiny nowadays, that when if you have to pull that trigger, pull that trigger. Don't hesitate. Do not hesitate. And, there's a difference between kill and murder. When it's time to kill, it's time to kill. If you got to protect yourself or somebody else, whether it's another SWAT member or even a third person you don't even know, if you just like the situation with I forgot what state he was in, happened a couple weeks ago. The police officer showed up and the girl came at the other girl with a knife.
Yeah.
That cop made a split-second decision and shot the girl with the knife. It's bad he ended her life, but he saved another girl's
Yeah,
life. by doing
yeah,
that.
and I know I'll probably get some hate for this, guys, but if you actually watch the video and not get brainwashed, she stabbed or made an attempted stab at one girl. There was a male that soccer kicked the girl's head on the ground, attempted to, and then she charged to stab at the other girl, and it was microseconds before that. And if you've never trained with a knife or seen the footage of Dan Inasano, Faulkner, 21-foot rule that I think now they teach police 30 feet, how dangerous and deadly it is, you know, you would you would want the officer to try to save you if someone was stabbing you or your child or something like that. So keep that in mind. I think that covers things pretty nicely. Um, anything else you want to leave behind, or if someone's considering law enforcement now, or if someone's considering SWAT, that they should probably get in good physical shape first. They should have their today was just a simple test of pure pistol accuracy. It wasn't running and gunning, it wasn't moving and shooting. It was just straight up fundamental trigger control, stuff like that. So I guess touch on that a second. We'll kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, what we did on the qualification, like you said, it's just basically so we could see that the officers in this school at least have some precision with their gun. Now, shooting on the qualification course like we did this morning is a lot different than shooting under stress and shooting under movement, which each student will be evaluated throughout the week. The last thing they'll do Friday afternoon is what we call the stress test. So they'll do the obstacle course, they'll be put on a whole lot of stress, they'll be exhausted, then they got to make a hostage rescue shot at the very end. And if they don't make that correct shot, they're dismissed from the school. If they want to come back, they'll have to come back through the whole class again. But it's kind of the last test instead of a written test or anything like that. And they get tested all week long throughout the school on their techniques. Team testing will be Friday morning. Actually, their team has to go in on an operation, has to clear a location, look for somebody. Simulations, role players be used on that.
Okay.
And so we make it as realistic as possible. But every situation is a win situation for them. If they do everything they've been trained throughout the week, they should be able to go in, find that individual, the role player, and arrest him without any possible shots fired.
If they make the entry and movements and communicate,
yes,
and do everything quickly as a team,
they'll be able to do it.
Okay, that's very interesting, guys. So realize they're not assassins. They're going in to stop whatever deadly threat's going on and save as many people as humanly possible. Unfortunately, people make really bad choices in life, and that's why when cops are in trouble, they call SWAT. Are you willing to touch on any of the past officer-involved shootings you've had? Was that with SWAT or as a patrol officer? Or
Most of that, well, two of them were when I was with the fugitive squad. And a lot more risky doing that than on a SWAT operation. Later on in my career at DeKalb, we actually started incorporating a lot of the fugitive warrants into a SWAT concept and got a lot of the fugitive squad guys trained under SWAT. So they just wouldn't be cowboys, just rushed in, like is basically what we used to do in the old days. But start incorporating and teaching them tactics to make it a lot safer. So if we have somebody barricaded in the house beside just 6 guys on the fugitive squad kicking in the door and running wild, no, we set up a perimeter, called everybody back, got the SWAT team out there, and actually turned it into a SWAT operation.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times you don't have the time to do that because a lot of people that will want it, they may be at one location 1 hour and they scoot to another location next hour.
And I think people should realize what you see on the media, they never really go into how violent felons or repeat offenders, that they broke into houses and put guns to pregnant women's stomachs, that they did the same thing just 2 years ago, that they were serving 7 years in prison and got released because of COVID for, must be pretty extreme child abuse for 7 years, when that's longer than most murder convictions in the U.S. So maybe you should actually do your own research before making judgments. I want to thank you, sir, for letting me participate and document a bit this week, and thank you for your many, many years of service and trying to keep the community safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, guys. Nice.